Been driving all along, feel like I'm dreaming. Okay.
Whoa. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Street Apologist Live. I'm your host, Vocab Malone. Today is Sunday, March 3rd, 2024. And let me see what's going on here. Well, we're doing a movie review, but our movie review is going to be a theological apologetics movie review. And I hope you learned something from it. We're going to have fun. It's me and BK Apologists. I would love to know, I might run a poll on this later, who has seen this movie? Yeah, it came out a little bit ago. You know, I get around things to when I can. I'm Midwestern at heart, so that means I'm slow moving sometimes. But there it is, the thumbnail. Had to move this show around a few times because I wanted to get my brother BK on. I'm glad he's coming on. This is going to be a good program tonight. So, come on in, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to BK Apologist's channel. Don't make us embarrassed to be here. Make us happy to be with you. And leave a comment. Welcome to Street Apologist Live. My man, BK Apologist. How we doing tonight, man?
Yeah, what's good? What's going on?
Not much, all right. So you, on your channel, did a review of this movie. What inspired you? What led you? Why'd you do a review of this, BK?
Well, I mean, it's within our wheelhouse. As urban apologists, we always want to deal with things that's kind of street oriented, and this film was definitely, I feel like, was aimed at our particular demographic, and it's talking about Jesus and just the biblical times and their view and their use of messaging with this vehicle of Jesus, right? It was kind of almost like a take on the sword and sandal films of the 70s and 60s, right? So they kind of did like a urban version of that, and I'm an urban apologist, so it just made sense for me to talk about it, because I know that they were going to use this particular vehicle to bring forth a message that's not going to be in line with the gospel. So.
Why did you say you knew it wasn't going to be in line with the gospel, though?
Because of because of who financially backed it. Our good friend Jay-Z.
Jay-Z financially backed it. I think it had a budget of $40 million, right?
I'm not sure, but
yeah, that's what I read.
Put some money up there, yeah.
Yeah, but I've also read it hasn't really done that well. You know what I mean? The movie hasn't really made its coin back, from what I've heard.
It did not. It pretty much flopped.
Came out about a month and a couple weeks ago, something like that. February is a short month, but yeah, it did. Do you think it deserved to flop, or do you think that was the man
yes,
holding
and
it
not
down?
because I'm a Christian and you're saying things that's not Christ-like. No, it's just not a well-made film. It felt like it was a series of one-act stage plays linked together to try to make a film, and it wasn't very cohesive. Things would pop out in and out of the plot that really didn't make any sense, but it made great point. In their mind, it was like, well, this is a great point we want to make. Not within the plot itself, So.
Well, I'm going to play the trailer here in a second, BK. One of the trailers, we're going to take a look and then comment on it so people get the vibe of this. Reason why we're covering this, everyone, is it's a movie that is not about Jesus, but Jesus is one of the characters. And actually, there's, a dozen or so people from the pages of scripture and history who make an appearance of some sort in this film. And, people made, I saw people going out of the way to be like, well, it's not about Jesus. It's not about Jesus. Okay, yeah. But they literally have scenes in it with just the Jesus character talking to somebody else where Clarence is not even in them. Now, they're shorter scenes, but I'm saying, like, you are going and doing some Jesus stuff on the side, too. Now, they also cross paths, whatever. But we're going to check this out, and I think this will be an interesting view, because what will happen tonight is you guys are going to learn a little bit of apologetics. You're going to learn a little bit of theology. You're going to learn a little bit about the Gnostic Gospels. You're going to see what's up. Tay Kaz wants to know, are we going to watch Dune 2? We're going to watch Dune 2.
I've seen the Dune 2, and it's good. And it's also very, very spiritual, political film. Definitely some heavy dealing with just the whole Messiah complex and how, the power of propaganda when it comes to, the anointed one and Messiah and prophecy, and how one can use that to capture the thoughts and minds of people. It's real heavy on that. So
Do you like the first one or second one better?
I probably like the first one better, but 2 is good too, though. 2 is really, really good.
So for me, I was never a big Dune fan. People know I like some nerdy stuff, so they might think I like all nerdy stuff. Not really. So Dune is like too much of nerdy stuff for me. Reading a thick old book with weird stuff. I'm just like,
Right. Well, I mean, if you like Star Wars, you're gonna like Doom because it's basically a ripoff. It's true. It's a ripoff.
just because they're in the desert hanging out doesn't mean
It's
and
more
got
than that. It's more.
some Jedi powers. Like
Right.
To me, the movie's like it's good. It's quality. The story is decent. This is just my amateur. I only saw the first one. I'm gonna see the second one, but I'm not gonna rush to see it. But
No, it's good.
So
Part 2 is definitely good.
It's just a little boring. It's just like, okay, I don't feel the pull. I don't feel. It's like, okay, yeah.
Well, there's definitely more action packed. Part 2 is definitely by far more action.
I guess I'm saying also the characters aren't especially compelling to me.
Well, I mean, it's because this is not the end of the series. I think they're going to do another 2 episodes because this is part 2.
Least, yeah.
You know what I mean? So they still have to develop into the next movie. So they can't give you everything.
BK Apologist to sound like Dune Apologist. Hey, shout out to Servant of Christ. We know he does real reviews. My bad, SOC, if we're stealing your thunder. We're not going to steal no more thunder. We'll let you handle Dune or BK or whatever I'm not going to be doing no Dune reviews. I don't think, unless I see it and I'm like, I got to do it. But let's get into this. Let's play this. And yes, it's fair use, but I don't really know how the rules work because I hear conflicting things. So we are going to comment on this. And I see people playing trailers, and I think it's allowed. So let's watch this trailer together. And then let's comment. And we're going to go scene by scene. There's lots of spoilers in this. That's how I'm going to do mine. Mine's a little different. It's been out, so you got time. So here we go. Here's the trailer with them. So in the one part, he says, and I saw him in the trailer, I'm a God. So when you see me, say hallelujah. You catch that, BK? I'm sure you did. And you see the Jedi Jesus in there?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, let's go scene by scene and talk about this. So again, there will be spoilers in this, but this review is going to be pretty comprehensive. So when you watch the Book of Clarence, it starts right off with the crucifixion scene. But it's like a false alarm. They make you think it's just going to be another white Jesus, but then they go right past him and go to Clarence because there is a white Jesus character in it. And then it starts after that with book 1, the 13th Apostle. So in general, do you remember BK, the 13th Apostle, that part of the book? What the essence of what he's trying to do is? The title kind of gives it away, but do you remember?
Well, I mean, he's basically a 2-bit hustler, and he was trying to win this chariot race, and
against Mary Magdalene.
Right, and he gets jacked by a bunch of young thugs.
But it said they were gypsies, bruh.
Gypsies, thugs.
No, I'm just saying it's funny that they're saying they're gypsies.
Right.
I cannot speak to the historical veracity of gypsies.
Yeah, that's an anachronism. That's definitely an anachronism.
Yeah, in Jerusalem at that time, because they said it took place.
There's no gypsies in the first century. None.
Lower City, Jerusalem, Sunday, 33 AD. Real quick, shout out to Richie Torres. I'll get to your question, and thank you for your super chat. And thank you, Alan Torres, for yours. You guys aren't related, are you? Because I feel like we got a couple different Puerto Rico brothers up in here. And just keeping the show running with the super chats, and the dog gets a treat when you give a super chat. So thank you for everybody for the super chats so far. I got 3, so the dog gets 3 cheats. Okay, sorry, go ahead. So there's this chariot race. Clarence has a black horse. They're going to the gypsy sector. The gypsies knock him off and take his clothes. Right. And then he jacks the homeless guy for his robe.
Right. And now he's stuck. Right.
Yeah, now he's stuck.
Debt.
because he owes Jedediah the Terrible, right? All this
Right.
money. And that's
Right.
where some people said, oh, there's elements of Friday in this, guy coming around you and me. And I saw Nathaniel from IUIC, his review. He got real mad about that. They're saying it's like Friday. You can't make this stuff up. He was offended by that.
But the movie is about making stuff up, so I don't know why he. I guess he thought it was going to be a biblical accurate depiction. I guess I don't know.
Well, he thinks visually it is, and that's why IUIC is so excited about this movie. Right. I want to show you a clip from one of the IUIC reviews, and they made a big deal out of this part, BK. When Mary Magdalene's about to leave them, Elijah and Clarence, she says, "Goodbye, heathens." Why do you think they got excited about that part?
Because the 2/3, right? They're part of the 2/3, so
yeah, the idea
it lends itself to their belief in that. So
yeah, the idea is it shows that the Israelites can be. Yeah, I was right, Alan and Richie and Alejandro, you guys are. Maybe it's because BK's on the show. But no, shout out to every single person with the super chat. So much love to Alan and Richie and Alejandro.
We stick together, fam. We stick together. You know what I
mean? Yeah. Much love to y'all, for real. Okay, so let's see here. Now she says that, and then after they're kind of feeling dejected, they know they're going to owe this guy money. The disciples come in, marching 2 by 2 in a row. One of them has prayer beads. Later on, we're going to see that's Judas. And then Jesus' character also makes an entrance, right? And Elijah's Clarence is like faithful, but just laid back. He's not a plotting. He's just a buddy type of friend. He goes, my God, when he sees the disciples with Jesus. And Clarence says, God doesn't exist. They do. And what does Clarence want when he sees them coming in 2 by 2?
He wants the power that they have, and
yeah,
especially since he now owes this guy a whole bunch of money and his life is on the line. So he's trying to figure out a hustle and where he can get the money back to this kingpin figure. And he figures, hey, if I could do what this Jesus dude is doing, then I'll be able to get the money.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Man, we also got brother Haram Adawan says he's watching from PR.
Nice.
Well, man, shout out to every single PR brother and sister in the place, whether you said something or not. Much love to y'all, seriously.
Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome, Richie. Appreciate it, man. So that's what happens in here. And right after that, then we learn that Thomas, one of the 12 disciples, his twin brother is the Clarence character. So most of you have seen Lakeith Stanfield, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's the main character named Clarence. And they have this confrontation, which is really the same actor talking to each other. It's pretty
real quick. I don't know if you got because you got Thomas and you got Clarence, right?
Yeah,
so
Clarence Thomas.
Right. So.
But you know what? And I think it's true why they named him Clarence, because I don't think it was they were going out of the way to give a shout out to a conservative Supreme Court justice. People have speculated, and I think it's right, because I saw the interview with the Breakfast Club. Why he named him Clarence? You know what I think?
Why?
Clarence 13X.
Okay.
Maybe it's a nod to him, because that's
the producer. Is he a 5%er? The producer
in the Breakfast Club interview. He's talking about that's why we refer to each other as gods. It sounds very 5%ish.
Oh, no, that's definitely 5% talk.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm saying there's people who are like imbibe elements of it, but they're not really all. It's like what's a 5%?
Right. They're cultural 5%ers.
Yeah. So to me, the Clarence and John McCrae actually pointed out in his review of it. He pointed out as well, which I thought was good on him. So Thomas is super judgy towards Clarence. He tells him you're a nobody. All this. Now, let me stop real quick here. Everyone. In the Gospel of John, Thomas is described 3 places as being a twin. So that part is true. John 11:16, John 20:24, and John 21:2. We'll say John, sometimes we'll say Didymus, so that means twin. Now, so the Bible never, of course, says who his twin is, and actually, you could hypothetically be named twin without being a twin. The Bible never explicitly says, but it seems kind of most likely that he was a twin. That's my thought. But what they do is they play off of that idea to have Clarence be the twin of somebody in there, because Didymus is a Greek word that does mean twin, and apparently Thomas can mean twin in Aramaic as well. So you do see that. You do see that. Now, there's some people, I don't know, I don't know much about this, but there are some people apparently who even speculate Thomas and Matthew are twins because their names are often listed together in the Gospels. That is, of course, just speculation.
Right.
But Clarence is Thomas's twin in here.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you think that the Thomas disciple character looked like some of the GMS members in their GMS art?
This guy, man. I mean, it lends itself. The GMS definitely with the bootleg ponchos that they construct and everything. So I could see GMS being like very excited about the wardrobe choices of the film, because I think that's what they're shooting for, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, exactly. Well, now everyone put a pin in that. We are going to come back to this whole Thomas twin Clarence thing, but first let's move through this. We're kind of giving you the overview. And I'm not even saying whether you should see it or not. I guess my general thought is if you're interested in cultural interconnection with scripture, you should, if you can discern. But if you don't know the gospel kind of decent, then maybe you shouldn't, because you could get thrown off by some stuff if you don't know which is fact and which is fiction. So he visits his mom then, Clarence does, and is like, hey, I'm going to get you out of here, whatever. She's chill. Then he visits Jedediah. That's the guy whom he owes money because the horse. And he says, you got 29 days. Then, one of my favorite scenes, he goes and gets baptized by John the Baptist.
Gets smacked up by John the Baptist.
Yeah. You like that scene?
I mean, it's hilarious because throughout the movie, he's constantly being called a blasphemer. And I know a lot of YouTubers who have reviewed this, they really lean heavy on how blasphemous this movie is. But I'm like, well, that's kind of a major plot point of the film, right? So it's not just we're going to sneak this message to blaspheme. Like, no, they're real upfront about this character. He is a blasphemer. That's part of his character, right? So that's part of the story arc, that he is an atheist, which is kind of weird. Like, how are you atheist in first century Jerusalem? But anyway, that's a whole different thing. But he's a blasphemer. His brother calls him that. John the Baptist calls him that. So it's like he's known to be a blasphemer. Like, that's part of that makes him him. So
John the Baptist, he holds him under the water a little bit long, huh?
We gotta get all that sin out. You know what I mean?
Well, that's kind of what they were implying. I mean, it was played up for laughs, although, again, there could be some questions if you're taking it too serious. It's like, well, getting baptized doesn't literally remove sin. However, this is John the Baptist baptism, which was a sign of Jewish people sort of returning to being faithful to the covenant. But that's not really what he's trying to do. He's trying to do it to get like cover to protect him from his woes that he has.
Real quick, I see GMS down under Australia. So vocab, under the 12 tribe chart, the Aboriginals would be what tribe, according to them then?
Oh, they are sometimes put in Naphtali by people like in GOCC. I don't know what GMS officially does it. They might do Naphtali or just say Northern Kingdom Brothers if they say they could be in there. GMS is sort of vibey. It's like the vibe of it. So I'm not. I would say Naphtali, perhaps. I'll put his comment on there though.
Right, and nobody's hurt, bro. Like, Jerusalem was a very metropolitan place. There was just a lot of trade, a lot of, you know what I mean? So you're gonna have various people from different parts of that known world there. So yeah, you're gonna see Africans, but you're also gonna see people from Syria. You're gonna see people, of course, Greco-Romans. So like no one's having an issue with that. That's not the reason why we're doing this. So that's just fake, bro.
Yeah, I pretty much thought that somebody would think that's what we were gonna do with this. But and GMS down under Australia, I'm not trying to be rude, but honestly, we're not as shallow as you. My first thought when I see this movie is what's the content as far as what they have Jesus saying and doing.
Right.
What are the things that they contradict or collaborate, biblically speaking? That's the concern. And if you've noticed, if you're really watching this, if you've watched this so far, I just want you to honestly think, GMS. Notice how calm and kind of relaxed we are about it all. It's not blasphemy. Christians don't. And notice also, we've just got started, but notice how detailed we are. We're giving you the facts. We paid attention to this. My point by saying this is, GMS doesn't Australia, and every Hebrew Israelite watching who like kind of had these knee-jerk reactions and thinks that way, just understand that Christians are now dealing with the Hebrew Israelites and their claims and stuff in a serious way. And you have to represent that when you come with us with your arguments and all that kind of stuff. If you don't, you're going to be left in the dust. You're not going to be really part of the conversation. You'll be talking about something else still, which you are. He's like, so who are the true people then, vocab? It's like this. The point is not how they're represented, because you've had European actors represent, you've had Italian actors represent. Like every now and then we've had Mediterranean-looking actors represent. We've had all kinds of people represent, obviously over-representation by Euro, especially in the 70s. Like I think the Jesus of Nazareth one, I think he had the blue eyes there. He's very fair and floaty and all that kind of stuff. This is kind of how it is. We understand that. If you're put into film, you're going to be guessing about what Jesus looked like. That's not even a main thing for us. We're talking about what's the content here. So, right. Keep on watching, and I think you'll learn something, because honestly, the reviews I watched by Hebrew Israelites, and this is not about Hebrew Israelism really, it's about this movie properly, they just did not really even interact at any meaningful level with the theology of the movie. It was mainly, those people look like us. I'm so glad. Okay. Do you have anything else than that? What else do you have to offer a view other than the guy looks like me, therefore I'm happy? Do you have something else? If you don't, maybe just listen to us, because you ain't doing much, bro. All due respect. So John the Baptist, he baptizes him, and that's pretty early. I did think it was funny. I remember laughing. I laughed out loud. It was a funny thing the way they did it. And John the Baptist is slapping him and stuff. It's funny. It's funny. How accurate is it? I don't know. But nonetheless, that's what happens. So
I could almost see John the Baptist doing something like that.
Yeah, something like that, right? You kind of could.
I don't think it's that much of a stretch, but
more just the theology where John the Baptist seems to, But again, it's not too serious there. We're okay with it. Now they're walking down the street, and Elijah, Clarence's buddy, he says he sees a group of Romans, right? Roman soldiers. And no big deal, but it just points out the kind of movie we're watching. He says centurions. Centurion is a guy who's got at least 100 guys under his command.
Right.
So if you just see Roman soldiers, you don't say centurions.
Right.
You might say Romans or Roman soldiers or some. You wouldn't say, well, they're all centurions, right? Like what? There's just a pack of centurions hanging together. Now, the reason why I say that is in some of the interviews, the director said he didn't do much research because people of his generation have already been to church and they don't really have to study that stuff up very much. We already know enough type of thing. He said that most of his research was like about how people got their hair did and stuff like that in the first century for the salon scenes or something.
Okay. That's
meaning it's just not, they're not in any meaningful way.
They're not historically accurate. Right.
Yeah, not in any meaningful way. Now, people have different opinions about The Chosen. I'll make a few comparisons to Chosen here, and you can share your opinion. I'm okay with that. But I'll give you an example of where The Chosen did some deep dives into biblical history. For example, they've got Jesus' disciples at one point going to the 10 Greek cities. It's called the Decapolis. These are these 10 Greek cities that that basically Greece planted in Israel for the purpose of Hellenization. This is a common thing. So the Decapolis are these 10 very Greek cities that are there in Israel, right? And they have them going to that, and they talk about some of the challenges. It's kind of interesting. But I was just more impressed that they were talking about the Decapolis. This is not like common stuff and Bible stuff where you're like, oh, the Decapolis, these 10. That's just one example. It's like, oh, okay, there's some stuff going on there. They try to show the process of how olive oil's made with some accuracy for the first century. It's like, brother, they're trying to show you to some degree what it would have been like. So it was, whereas this movie is kind of specifically modernizing stuff. So the salon, even though he said he researched it, it's clearly just made after a modern day salon.
Right. Well, he's not focused on world building. Right. That's the whole thing. It's like, you're not really being that careful with giving us a perspective of how it must have really been to be in Palestine in the first century. I'm just using this as a stage to get my point across. So I'm not going to, I'm not so focused on the aesthetics. I'm more focused on my message through the aesthetics.
And Jay-Z has said things similar to that in his interviews where he said, well, it's really just the story of an everyman. A guy who wants to be somebody and make his mark on the planet before he leaves. That's what we all want to do. It's all of our story. So that is what they're saying is the interest. They're making the first century element just sort of incidental. Right. But I kind of feel like they're trying to play it both ways to an extent with that. Because they're saying that, but then it's trying to make you think there's elements of reality how these things are and take you there to an extent. But... Right. Real quick, what did you think of the overall visuals of the movie and the way it sort of looked as far as that goes?
I think the visuals was pretty cool. I think the sets were pretty decent. I feel like that could be somewhat accurate. I don't know so much about the clothing, too tough, but I think the actual the way the buildings were constructed and the roads, I think was pretty much. Pretty close. Wardrobe, maybe not so much.
Yeah, they had little flourishes here and there, but So then he goes and visits Jedediah's sister, who's the villain so far in a way. And he's, he crushes on her, but she's kind of playing hard to get. And then they go and get high and float around. They literally float. They're actually floating. And this is a thing we haven't talked about, but he sells weed, but it's called Logan weed or something but basically he's a weed dealer. So when they run into the Romans, he goes over to the guy selling pottery or something. He's like, hey, hold this real quick. He dishes off in the side.
Now, by you saying that, right? So for the Hebrews to be so happy about this film, should they be? Because look at what the main character is doing. He's doing a chariot race. It's basically a first century drag race. He owes money to the bookie, right? So he's trying to hustle, and he sells weed on the side. And you're happy about this guy. You know what I mean? It's really? This is not good representation if that's what you're being excited about. This is not good representation at all. He's an atheist.
Yes, but here's what I think. I think from what I've seen is what they're trying to say is this is us before we keep these laws, statutes, and commandments. We're lost. We're nobody. We can't get the woman. And they're seeing the disciples when the disciples enter. They're seeing the disciples as a portrayal of them coming into the hood, and how we're giving these brothers hope. We're showing them. No, some of you have the wrong motivation for joining, like Clarence, but the Lord will still turn you around because you're ultimately His people. So they kind of see this as this is a metaphor of someone prior to joining them. They might see it as a hustle. They're involved with this. They don't believe in God because they've only seen bad, whatever. But then the prophets,
when they meet Yahushua,
yeah.
Then, right.
Yeah, Shun Futures says the Book of Clarence 13, the Book of Clarence X, right? See, that's what I was. He kind of caught on there too. Yeah. So let's take a look through. I threw a poll up, by the way, to see who had watched it and stuff like that. And we'll see. So he floats around, and then he had a literal light bulb comes. And I kind of like these little touches of the movie. The movie clearly had style and flair. I'm not mad at that at all, right? You know, they're floating around while they're high, and it goes ding. And he hatches a scheme to become the 13th apostle. That's the whole thing. Like, we're going to get that money, power, respect. Right. And then they show a scene where his crush talks to his mom. Then Clarence visits Thomas, this is his twin brother, with the disciples, like at their hangout, basically. And he says, I won't join, right? I'm gonna try to join up, right? I'm going to try to join up. And they laugh at him, right? Now, check this out. Did you catch this, BK? I want to get your comment on this. When he wants to join, I think it's his brother who says this. So Clarence wants to join and become the 13th disciple, although they say apostle in here. And what he says, you don't even believe in the Immaculate Conception. Now, why is that a problem, brother?
Well, first of all, that is one, it's not Bible. Two, it wasn't created at that time at all. There was no Immaculate Conception at that time. No one was thinking of it. You know, that comes way after.
Yeah, imagine you want to join the disciples, and one of them says to you, you can't join because, and now I'm going to define the doctrine. You can't join because you don't believe that Mary was sinless.
Right.
They'd be like, what? They'd be like, hey, wait, no one believes that right now.
Right.
No,
very anachronistic. No. Right.
Why would I believe that? Jesus, that's not in the Gospels. Jesus didn't teach that. His mom didn't say it.
You guys don't believe that.
No one believes.
Asking me to do it. It's like, you know.
And what this shows is, if you watch this movie and you don't know a little bit of theology, a little bit of history, a little bit of Bible, you'll get all caught up and you won't even catch, and you won't realize how skilled and talented the director is, certainly, and the writers, skilled and talented, no doubt about that, but how ignorant of theology and Bible they are.
Right. Facts.
Now, I could see Hebrew Israelites liking this because they see it spiritual, that someone doesn't believe in the Immaculate Conception, because neither do they. And, of course, a lot of one-Westers call the virgin birth the Immaculate Conception.
Right.
So, listen, if you're listening to this program, you need to understand something. Terms have meanings, and you can't just make them up because you don't understand what's going on. The Immaculate Conception is a Roman Catholic doctrine that Protestants have never believed. It is not there in the beginning of Christianity. It is added on later, and the idea has to do with Mary, not with Jesus. The idea is Mary herself was sinless. That's what the Immaculate Conception. We don't hold to that. We think it contradicts Romans 3. We think it's clearly a later development. We think it gets into the Marian veneration that is inappropriate for God's people to give as much respect as we have for his earthly mother. We say, no. She needs a savior too. She ain't got nothing extra. No. So this is a fascinating thing, and it should be a clue to let you know, okay, you can't take this movie too seriously. It may look cool, it may sound good, but you cannot take it seriously as far as what it's trying to tell you, and that's going to be important later on. Then he says, I just said it was, and then Clarence responds, he says, I just said it was a bit far-fetched. And then Peter yells out, blasphemy! Do we really think Peter would yell blasphemy at someone who didn't believe that Mary was sinless? And you know what's real funny? I don't know if you caught this, brother, because the Hebrewites are watching this movie being all excited just because they're like, look, he looks like apostle. He looks like elder. Hey, Thomas says, I think he says it to Clarence too. He says, it's apostle, by the way, not apostle. Did you catch that line?
I didn't catch that. No.
Thomas says it's apostle, by the way, not apostle. Ain't that funny? Because don't they always say apostle a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, man.
So real quick, again, no one's upset that there's black people in this movie, man.
Not upset, not even a little bit.
You know, and no one's hurt. GMS says we're hurt. We're not hurt. You're insecure because you can't take a critique. So you're insecure. That's the problem.
Hey, GMS down under Australia, if you knew your Bible and you knew what Gnosticism was, you wouldn't be putting on your pom-poms and your miniskirt to jump up and down and cheerlead for this movie. Because you would say, you know what? This movie is teaching a false Messiah. It's got Gnosticism in it. Y'all bang on the Trinity because someone told you to say, that's Greek philosophy. And then you go out here promoting a movie which literally has Greek philosophy in it. Meaning the Neoplatonism, the Neoplatonism that influenced Gnosticism is clearly in this movie if you understand what he says at certain points, which we're getting into. Just hold on. And y'all are out here, woo, 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 woo.
Yeah.
So then Judas, of course, he challenged Clarence. He's like, hey, if you really want to join us, go free the gladiator slaves. That'll prove his mettle, right? So then he goes to the gladiator slave master, who's got a face that looks like Phantom of the Opera. Now, did you see anything symbolic about the fact that Asher, who's the gladiator slave master, the way his face was painted? Did you catch that? At least in my mind.
No, I can't remember now.
His face is half white, and he's a slave master.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying? His face is like the Phantom. He's white like this.
Right. He's a sellout.
So then Clarence has to fight Barabbas the Immortal. And he beats him. But Barabbas is like, how are you going to beat Barabbas? But he doesn't kill him, but he beats him. So then Asher's like, okay, I'm going to let Barabbas go, but that's it. So he returns and is like, yeah, I freed a slave, basically, Right. And then his brother says, you'll never be one of us, Clarence. You were destined for failure. Again, Thomas is a total jerk in this movie. Yeah. And Clarence is mad, and he says, what about you? You're supposed to honor thy father and mother, and you went and left Jesus. You went and left mom when she was like on her deathbed when she was sick to go join this new Messiah. So I
thought that was really interesting because
tell me. Go ahead, bro.
Because I could see how people who are not believers, using that, like you're not where you need to be, And maybe Thomas, the Thomas in this particular film, maybe he wasn't as compassionate as he needs to be. Because he doesn't seem to be a compassionate dude at all in the movie.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like,
not
you're blaspheming, you're this and that. Right. So he might have, exposed a failing with him, and maybe because of that, it pushed him further into his atheism. Because why would I want to follow a God that my brother follows, but doesn't take care of our mom? It's the whole problem of evil argument in a sense.
And he does bring up the
God
problem
is so
of
great.
evil.
Why is this happening? It's kind of like that.
He does bring up the problem of evil in the movie as well as an atheist to critique. It's never really answered in any meaningful way. He just gets to throw it out there. But it's interesting because Jesus does say, hey, you got to leave everything and follow me. Now, Thomas is kind of jerky about it. Like I say, he's super judgy in this movie so far.
Right.
But it's interesting because one guy says, oh, no, remember, I'm talking about the Gospels now. Oh, I got to go bury my dad. What he's basically saying is I got to wait on my dad to die and then I'll jump. And he's like, nah,
right.
you're not you're not worthy. Your hands on the plow, you're looking back. Nah, bro.
Right.
So it is interesting, all that going on there, because I wonder if it's almost a critique of Jesus' call to radical discipleship. But I don't even know if the movie's that deep, to be honest with you. I don't even know if they're going there like that.
But I feel like, again, it's the, you claim to be righteous, you claim to be spiritual, but here's this part of your life that I find lacking. And people will use that, like, when they look at the life of a disciple and if they see something that doesn't 100% equate with Jesus, that's enough of a reason for them not to be a disciple in their minds.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah. And that's how they portray Thomas in the movie. So then Clarence confronts the disciples and he says something I'm going to tell you in a second. Hold on, audience. It's very important. BK is going to show some slides about this in a minute. And he basically leaves, and then another light bulb appears. And so, remember, his original idea was basically, I'm going to win a chariot race. That didn't work out. So his second idea was, I'm going to become the 13th apostle. So now his new idea is, I'm going to become the new Messiah. They didn't let me join. I'm going to become the new Messiah. But before he leaves, he tells the disciples something, who laughed at him and stuff like that. By the way, the disciples are kind of jerky too. Like, they laugh when he says he wants to join up.
Right.
He says to disciples, I know there is no God, basically. And he says this is a quote, and then he showed a slide. Knowledge is stronger than belief. Knowledge is stronger than belief. That is a key refrain in the movie again and again and again. And people talk about Gnosticism, but a lot of times don't know much about it. They just use it as almost a slur. Everyone got to understand in Greek, you have this word gnosis, Gnosis, transliterated. And gnosis means knowledge. It's one way to be translated as gnosis, means knowledge. And the reason why Gnosticism was called Gnosticism, which is really a mutated Christianity, it's not really Christianity. But the reason why it was called Gnosticism is because the emphasis on the gnosis, on knowledge. The idea was specialized kind of knowledge you had to have about reality. So it was very Greek philosophical, very heady enlightenment, secret wisdom, that kind of stuff. And so this movie plays into that. And I've commented before when we've covered nations of gods and earth, that's 5%ers. And shout out, there was one brother in the chat that said he was a former 5%er. He said that's how he caught right away. The Book of Clarence is probably Book of Clarence 13X. Shout out to that brother. Hope you're a believer. I don't know where you're at now. Let's talk. But this refrain, I've commented on when we've covered some elements of Nations of God and Earth theology, 5%ers, about how some of the elements are Gnostic sounding. But let's go to these slides, because BK always got to have a slide or two or three or four or five or six or seven. Now today it's only a couple. But this comes from his amazing show that you did with Adam Coleman. It was such a great show because you guys went deeper into the weeds than most programs did. And can you talk a little bit about that, brother?
Yeah. So at first, right, the plan for, he wanted to be an apostle. Of course, that didn't happen. So he's like, you know what? I will become a Messiah figure myself. Now, in the movie, at first he just plans to just take Jesus's bars, right? He's going to bite from Jesus and just say what he says. But then he decides to, no, you know what? I'm going to have a competing gospel. So he's preaching to the masses, right? So this is what he believes is the true good news, right? And like what Vocab said, that the crux of his gospel is not in belief. They'll say stuff to you is like, well, if you ask, well, do you believe that there's a God? It's like, well, I don't have belief. I have knowledge. I know. So somehow knowing is more, it's higher up than belief, and they downplay belief. In fact, they believe that belief is just your imagination. It's worthless, So I don't believe when they do that. And to the Hebrews in the bushes, this is going to help you too, because they say this about you guys too. Right? Because they're like, oh, well, you just believe. Right? And it's definitely a misnomer. And the reason for that is when we look at philosophy about that is knowledge. And unthinking things cannot know anything. Clauses can also be used to describe desires and intentions. These cannot constitute knowledge. Rather, knowledge is a kind of belief. It about a particular matter, one knowledge about it. So you can't separate the two. They work in concert here. Okay. Knowledge then requires belief. Of course, not all beliefs constitute knowledge. Belief is necessary, but not sufficient for knowledge. We are all sometimes mistaken in what we believe. In other words, while some of our beliefs are true, others are false. As we try to acquire knowledge, then, we are trying to increase our stock of true beliefs while simultaneously minimizing our false beliefs. We might say that the most typical purpose of beliefs is to describe or capture the way things actually are. That is when one forms a belief, one is seeking a match between one's mind and the world. So belief is basically what best purports with reality, right? And some beliefs don't purport well with reality, but others do. So just to say beliefs in general is bad is fallacious. It's what you believe in that matters. And if your belief purports with reality, then that's a true belief. And we believe that the reason why people should accept the gospel of Jesus is because it best purports with reality. It's a belief that's based on actual knowledge. and it's a conviction on knowledge. That's what a belief is. So that's it. That's all I wanted to share.
No, that's good. And you guys went even deeper on the program you did. Tell people how to watch that program, the title and stuff like that. Just a little plug for that program.
Just go to BK Apologist. Man, I forgot what I entitled that video, but just look for go to my channel and then on the search engine put Book of Clarence and you'll find the episode.
That's good. All right. So here's where we're going to play another trailer. Again, I hope we're able to play this. This is fair use. We're commenting on the material. We're going to play this second trailer. You'll see something similar so you can know what we're talking about. We are talking about Book of Clarence, and we're doing a theological review, mainly interested in the biblical element, the biblical history and theology, and where it contradicts and where it corresponds with this movie. So here, let's check this next trailer out so you can get a taste here.
I caught something. I caught something the second time you played that. He says, "Well, I'm not a bad person." No, you are. You're very much a bad person. Like you are just being deceitful and trying to take people's money by claiming to be a Messiah figure and you don't believe that about yourself. It's a scam. You are a bad person. You're very much a bad person.
Definitely doesn't have a proper view of who man is, of sin and all that. But I mean, why would we honestly expect it to? Jay-Z's the executive producer. I mean, we're not even going deep into all Jay-Z's comments about, life begins when you leave the church. And, he's Jehovah and he's rocking the 5% change at the games and stuff like that. We're not even talking about that right now. So yeah, there's a whole thing, but we're just looking at the movie and all we're saying, we're not even saying don't see it. I actually think I like Christians watching things that tie in some way to these issues. Now, I wish it was more truth and less falsehood as far as the theology and the history, but I like Christians watching and developing ability to interact with this material, so I'm not even
anytime the mainstream media actually trots out some sort of biblical conversation, that just makes our job easier because now it's like, well, since you guys are talking about it, let's have this discussion now. Because a lot of times when we bring it up, they want to hear it. But hey, you brought it up, so let's have the conversation.
Yeah, I view these cultural moments, however small, because I don't think long-term Clarence is going to have much of an impact from what I can tell.
Right.
These days it's harder and harder for something to have staying power in the first place. The Exodus or whatever, Ten Commandments, now I forgot what it was actually called, but, the Charlton Heston vehicle, that stuck around for a while, playing on TV, and, when people thought of Egyptians and biblical characters and say, well, look at those folks, pretty much European actors and stuff like that. And there was an impact, I think you could say, from Cecil B. DeMille's picture, for better or for worse, about how people saw these things, right?
Right.
And I think it influenced depictions after that of the story, maybe to a certain extent, Prince of Egypt. But this, I think, less so, for better or for worse. And it's a moment that's here. Although I could see, Hebrew Israelites and people like that wanting to use the stock footage, almost look, here he is, that because it lines up with that idea. Right. And again, I'm almost like, okay, yeah, but what's he saying? That's what I want to know, So we go into book
video, right? Because of what he's saying, not so much. I mean, honestly, the movie is just a glorified SNL sketch.
Almost, yeah.
Right? It kind of has that kind of a vibe. So,
and what's weird is it's like that in the beginning, but it's kind of a dramedy. So at the end, it's not very funny. It's like, are we just watching a crucifixion of this guy who was a two-bit hustler just a second ago, but I guess changed his mind? I guess that's what's happening in this third act. Okay. Book 2, though, New Messiah. So he's got two friends, Elijah and Zeke, the cab driver. And also, I say two, really it's three. He's also got Barnabas the Immortal. So he's got a little crew now.
Yep.
And Zeke is actually the kid from Stranger Things. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't catch that.
And I don't know if his beard is real or not, but it's like, dang, this guy's all grown up now, And his name is Zeke. So he knows where everyone lives, right? So they're having this little conversation. They're about to go talk to Mother Mary, as they call her. And he tells him this idea of becoming the new Messiah. And Elijah says, well, if it means us not getting killed, all hail the new Messiah. And then they have the show me your papers scene. What do you think of the show me your papers scene? Remember, he's like, you don't have to show him your papers.
Right. I mean, but that's a definite call to, you know, what happens to a lot of Black and brown people on the highways and byways of America. I mean, that's just a truth that happens to a lot of us. So, you know, for them to make mention of that, you know, that's I think that was a cool connection.
Yeah, it was sort of an on the nose reference to modern day things, no doubt about that, and trying to say, okay, there's this, there's that. And, you know, certainly it is true, though, under Roman occupation, that Israelites did not have the same freedoms that they may have wanted.
Right.
The Romans try to be somewhat lenient as they could with the Jewish people, but at the end of the day, you still have pagans who are oppressing you. And
Right.
they
I mean, there
pay
was
taxes.
the Judean tax, because they knew that there was no way the Jews would participate in these heretical, you know, rituals, which was part and parcel of their economy, right? You being a part of the rituals helped the money flow. So, but they knew that the Jews would not do that, but they still needed the money. So, like, all right, you don't have to participate in this, but we're going to tax you for not participating in this. Right. So you still got taxed even though you didn't do it. So
No doubt.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sean Futures, and shout out to Deshaun Love and everyone else, Robin Patrick, everybody coming through. How y'all doing? Patriots for Christ. Bada boom, bada bing. Okay, so continuing on them, they go to Mother Mary, and basically he says to Mother Mary, this is what they call her: tell me the tricks Jesus knew so I can learn how to do the tricks. That's what he's like, you know, teach me the tricks, because he views it all as a scam.
Right.
And there's an interesting scene in here where she slaps him because he mocks the virgin birth. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then she says this: the word virgin is twisted. Now that's where I'm like, oh, we about to do the whole Alma thing. You know, if you listen to my debate with Tazariak, we kind of got into this.
Right.
But what's weird is she like says that, but then she kind of affirms it. So I wrote this down, BK. Here's what he said: word virgin is twisted. This is Mary, Jesus' mother in the movie. Word virgin is twisted. Some say unsexed. Some say unmarried. So if it's twisted, because he's mocking the virgin birth, and she says, well, it's twisted, some say unmarried.
So Mary is giving commentary on what Mary said?
Jesus'
Because that's
mother
not what
in the
Mary
movie,
says in the scriptures. I mean,
yeah, like giving commentary on the debate. It's a modern debate about what
it's like a meta. She's doing a meta narrative on her own dialogue.
Yes, and she says some say unsexed. That would be the proper definition and understanding in this situation. Right. Which again, I went through this with Tazariak. I'm not the only one. Shout out to the brothers Unbiased Sports. They do this too. There's other people. And then says some say unmarried. That's actually like Tazariak and those guys' position, where they're not married, but they're doing it. So it's not really virgin like that. But then she says, I was just, and this is a quote, so some say unsexed, some say unmarried. I was just un, and that is God's business. So it doesn't really define what it is. She just says, I was un. So unsexed, unmarried, which would seem to give credence to the idea that she's unsexed and unmarried. But then after that, she says, Joseph and I were unmarried. So then, like, giving credence the other way. But then later on, they do indicate, it seems like Joseph's saying he's not the father, that Mary really is, kind of giving credence to it. And then she does call him the Son of God in the conversation.
Right.
So,
but, I mean, I think that they play fast and loose with that because they didn't want to be, you know, hemmed up on any one position. You know, they kind of want to be very ambiguous so that they don't have to defend anything about that particular point in the film.
Yeah.
So it's like, you decide.
Shout out
even
to
though
D.
we know what Mary said.
Thank you for sharing the links. By the way, everyone check out those links because that's what we were just talking about. And shout out to Nate and anybody else up in here who's helping the mod. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, this is what's going on. This is why you got to know your stuff with a movie like this, because it's sort of like interesting or fun, but it's not really designed to inform you in any serious way. Well, unless it's like trying to misinform you, basically. You
Right.
know?
Right.
So then he starts preaching, the Clarence character who's saying he's the new Messiah. And here's what he says. Belief will be the undoing of all mankind. That was a weird thing. So this Jesus wannabe, Clarence says, belief will be the undoing of all mankind. And that's the contradistinction there is over and against knowledge, or knowledge
Right.
is over and against belief.
Well, this is an example of subscribing to a connotative understanding of a word as opposed to the actual definition, right? Because we just talked about how belief works in tandem with knowledge, but the way the mainstream parlance of the word belief literally just means, well, I just think about stuff that even if it's not real, it's okay. Like for most people, they think that's what belief is. So they're going by the connotative understanding of the word as opposed to the actual definition of the word.
Yeah, and this is important too, because biblically, when you look and you get into where the word in English comes faith, you see this word there, pistis.
Right.
And the idea that you see portrayed biblically is the idea, it essentially means trust.
Right. It's a believing loyalty. Yeah.
Say what? Go ahead.
No, it's a believing loyalty.
Yes.
That's another way of but it's not the faith that you see in the Webster's dictionary. That's not the faith that we see in scripture at all. That's not the word.
That's why I almost like the word trust better.
Yeah, yeah.
And the idea here is with biblical trust, we're trusting God. He gives us good reason.
Yes. But
nonetheless, that's the way the movie does it. It's basically comparing like, well, some people have knowledge, others just have faith and belief.
Right.
Very 5% are very Gnostic. So then there's a miracle montage. And I love this, not because it's showing a bunch of fake miracles, but because of the song. I believe in miracles. I believe in you. Don't you love that song?
I like when they sing it. Not so much you.
Oh, man. Oh. And then there's a part where they make a funny little reference. People say racks on racks on racks or stacks on stacks on. Instead, they say shekels on shekels on shekels. And then he actually starts dissing the real Jesus. Clarence does. He says, quote, pray to the false prophet if you will, but I am your new Messiah.
Right.
And again,
well, in order for the scam to work, he has to do that.
Yeah.
It can't be two, right? I got to be the only ones. That way I get all the money, right?
Yeah, you got to
do that.
You got to show yourself how, what differentiates you from your competition, right?
Right, right.
So what's interesting about that is that I could see some truth to that. Here's what I mean by that. Not that Clarence is a Messiah, but that there were other messianic claimants before and after Jesus Christ. People should understand that. And even all the way up into the modern era, people haven't stopped claiming to be the Messiah. And there's an interesting question about why don't most of us know their names? And people say, well, history's written by the winners. The real truth is that these messiahs had things happen where their followers lost faith in them most of the time as well. They made prophecies. They were false prophecies. They got killed, but that wasn't part of their ministry because Jesus explains how that's the whole point. He has to break that down. And I went over this in the Isaiah 53 debate to an extent with Zion Lex. So we don't know their names by and large because their followers abandoned them because it was clear they weren't the Messiah. Basically, back in the day, it was like if your Messiah dies, you go get yourself a new Messiah. It's different with Jesus because of the resurrection.
I mean, that's what Gamaliel says in the Book of Acts, right?
Yeah.
He lists a bunch of people. Well, you remember this guy? He was a big thing. He dies, and then he left. So it's like, let's be careful with this Jesus dude because if he's who he says he is, we'll be fighting God. Right, so
I do want to point that out to everybody, that there's a reason why Jesus's followers and what he taught stuck around. They're not all equal at all because the rest are frauds, and history shows it. So then you have a couple weird things happen. One is his brother confronts him at this point. He's like, hey, why are you doing this, right? And I'm going to play this part from my phone, and I hope I hope it doesn't ding because this is not part of a trailer. So I'm going to see what happens if I do this. I at least want people to hear the audio. So listen to this, everyone. This is where Thomas confronts Clarence. Okay, so listen to this, everyone. It's just like a very brief clip, but I want to play this for you. Okay, here we go.
Why is that any of your concern? Because you're pretending to be the Messiah. Well, if you know what I'm doing, why did you ask me what I'm doing? Because I want to know why you're doing it. I'm sure you do. So you can scribble it in your little Gospel of Thomas, huh? How dare you?
Catch that part?
You said something about the Gospel of Thomas?
Yes.
He actually says that?
So
I didn't catch that before. Wow.
When Thomas's character confronts the Clarence character about being a false Messiah, Clarence says, "Oh, I'm sure you want to know my motivation, so you can scribble it in your little Gospel of Thomas."
Right.
Now, everybody, here's why that's significant. If you don't know what's going on, you're like, wait, what? The Gospel of Thomas? Because they're making it seem like Thomas is contemporaneously writing this gospel. Other people are aware of it, and it actually comes from Thomas. Let me tell you why there's problems with you thinking any such thing, everybody, because that's what it says. And it's not incidental. It's the Gospel of Thomas, because guess what? Gospel of Thomas is a Gnostic-leaning false gospel. It comes around 150 AD. It is one of the earlier Gnostic-leaning gospels. But by 150 AD, if you know your timeline even just a little bit, Thomas was way dead. Even if he lived as long as he could have lived, he's way dead. Now, tradition says he was martyred in India. But either way, he's way dead by the time it pops off. So it doesn't come from him. And there is evidence it's derivative of the gospel. So just hold up. Can you talk a little about Thomas while I show people a couple book recommendations? Just whatever you know.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I think we see a part of that in what does it happen about the clay pigeons? Does he do that in that scene?
Oh yeah, it's coming short. Just a second. Yeah, it's coming.
All right,
but that's from the infancy gospel. That has Thomas's name attached to it, but it's a separate document. But go ahead.
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, it's from what I could tell, is the Gospel of Thomas the one where women can't make it to heaven unless they turn to men? Is that part of the Gospel of Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's crazy stuff like that. Like just women just can't get into heaven unless they transform into men. Which is, we know that this is a ripoff of actual Kemetic literature, because in the Book of the Dead, actually, it teaches that the person has to become a creator god in order to get through the duat. And we know that the creator gods in Egypt are all male. So for a woman to make it through the duat, the Egyptian underworld, she actually has to change her gender in order to make it. So when Thomas is talking about that, we can see where Thomas is getting his source material from. And it's not from the other apostles. It's from Kemetic literature.
So here is a place where you can read the Gospel of Thomas. This is a book which was a history book club selection called The Secret Teachings of Jesus, 4 Gnostic Gospels. And it's translated by Marvin Meyer, who's involved with a lot of this stuff. And it's got the Secret Book of James, the Gospel of Thomas, the Book of Thomas, and the Secret Book of John. I've also got Robert Grant and David Noel Friedman's. Notice how these are always titled The Secret Sayings of Jesus, a modern translation of the Gospel of Thomas with commentary. So these are 2 different translations. This was also something that, had scholars involved with it and whatnot. And I think this is a Barnes & Noble copy. And then, Bart Ehrman will talk about these, and he's got a book called Lost Christianities, The Battle for the Scriptures and the Faiths We Never Knew. And he kind of promotes, like, Christianity was wild, and there was just all these different beliefs, and Thomas was legitimate. And then you got John Dominic Crossan, who says that Thomas may have been Q, and what that would mean is that Thomas is before the others, and it's where they got their information from. Because Thomas is what's called a logia gospel, filled with logion, I think is the proper way to pluralize it, but I could be wrong. But I do know it's each individual one's a logia, and what it means is sayings. It's a sayings gospel. So if you read Thomas, there's no events that are transpiring. It's just Jesus says this, Jesus says that, Jesus says this, Jesus says that. That's what Thomas is. Hopefully you understand that I've read Thomas. Now, I recommend if you want a more scholastic take on this, read Mark Goodacre's book. He teaches at Duke. May not agree with everything he says, his presuppositions, but he's a good scholar. This is called Thomas and the Gospels. The case for Thomas's familiarity with the skeptics, with the synoptics. Now, why is that important? Dr. Goodacre shows that Thomas was familiar with the synoptics. What's that mean? It means Thomas was second. When I say second, he was after the synoptics already came out. So if Thomas is familiar with them, which Lacona has also proved this, I think. Mike Lacona has talked about this, shown that they're familiar with the synoptics, specifically the Syriac translations, perhaps even the Didache. If Thomas is familiar with those, and I know I'm using some technical language here, it shows Thomas is after the fact, and it's almost certain it is the case. Some scholars try to push it first because they want to make the Gnostic faith sort of the real faith or something like that. But let me show you a couple other things that I want to recommend to you along these lines. This is a great book, Can We Trust the Gospels, by Peter J. Williams, about why you can actually trust the Gospels as they are. This is Charles Hill's book, Who Chose the Gospels. This is published on Oxford University Press. Great book, I recommend. Another book is The Four Gospels and the One Gospel of Jesus Christ by Hengel. This is a great book to understand more of this. This is more of a popular level book. David Marshall's The Truth About Jesus and the Lost Gospels, a reason look at Thomas, Judas, and the Gnostic Gospels. And he's also got another book that's why the Jesus Seminar can't find Jesus and Grandma Marshall could. Huh? It's a good book, though. It's a really good book. He's a great guy. Again, a little more academic now, gets into the early canonicalist. This is also on Oxford by Mead and Gallagher, the biblical canon list from early Christianity. And lastly, Yamauchi's book about Gnosticism in general, and it shows how it's later and different things like that. Pre-Christian Gnosticism, a survey of the proposed evidences. Very important book to have as well. Now, there's some others, but my point is to say that there is no indication in any way, all the evidence is against the idea that Thomas was writing a gospel. And I'm going to read from it at the end of the show. So I want to get through the review first, and I don't know if BK will be able to stick around for the end part, but I'm going to go through and read some of it and spend some time with you guys. Hopefully we'll have time. Now, back to this. Something makes Clarence have a little bit of change of heart. We're back to the movie review now. Because he goes back, he's got all this money he's got from these fake miracles, and then he decides to free the gladiator slaves with the money he's made from the collections. So instead of just for himself, he's about to do it. He's about to help other people. So then he visits Verinia and says to her, miracles aren't real. Verinia is his crush. And Elijah's like, hey, if you give this money away to free these slaves, you know we're going to die, right? He's like, I just want to do the right thing now. So he's totally changed his tune. He's willing to give up his life, basically, after doing these fake miracles. And, there's an interesting thing there because you see how people will see religion as a hustle. Clearly, Clarence saw it as that. And so we know there's a lot of people that are preaching in pulpits who they got into it because they saw it as a hustle. That's why we're definitely allowed to critique them, because it's very obvious, nakedly so sometimes, that there's plenty of these people who are in it just for money. That's what Clarence does. Right. Now you have the Mary Magdalene.
Before you get into that, there's some messaging there too that, as long as I do good by my people, it doesn't really matter how I come across the money. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, but at the end of the day, I help my people out. So if I had to lie and steal, if I had to, put on airs in order to help my people get out, then it's okay. Yeah. Because that's a point that's being made there as well.
Yeah. Professional Ock says, and thank you for the super chat, sir. I watched this movie strictly for entertainment, and I was thoroughly entertained. It was a movie. Lighten up, Christians. Okay, well, we didn't watch it strictly for entertainment.
And nobody's clutching their pearls here. We're not like, oh my God. No one's doing that here. I don't know if you've been watching the show. Nobody here is aghast. How could they? Like, no one's doing that here, fam. Like,
it's just like people aren't used to any kind of in-depth analysis. Like, if you wouldn't be so knee-jerk, you would realize you could learn something about the Gospel of Thomas and Gnosticism and things like that and be like, oh, they're going deep. Okay. But instead you're just like, hey, it's entertainment. Don't think too deep about it. Why not? When you start putting words in Jesus' mouth, not just that are potentially historical fiction, meaning he could have maybe said that, or it's incidental, it's not like necessarily teaching anything.
right.
That's one thing. But when you start putting words in his mouth that are clearly teaching something, a Christian should care if it's going to make an impact on people about what they think. And if this movie, which it does, part of what it portrays is that the Gospel of Thomas is legitimate, I'm going to have a problem with that. And guess what? So should you if you care about the historical veracity of the Bible.
And to say that the director and Jay-Z didn't have an agenda, I think is just foolhardy. It's like it's very clear that they're trying to say something here. What we're saying is, well, what is it they're trying to say, and is it in line with Scripture? That's what we're doing.
Yeah,
so if they can put something out, we can critique it. I don't see what the problem is.
Matter of fact, let me flip over. This is going to take a second for me to set up real quick here. But just give me 1 second to set this. You didn't watch any of the Breakfast Club interview?
First time watching it right now. It's a morning show, the radio, and they are well known for having really, really big guests, and they just interviewed them, and it's I forgot the name of the thing, iHeartRadio. So it's a huge chain of radio stations throughout the country, and the Breakfast Club is one of the biggest shows within that chain, and they're known for having very provocative.
This is with the director Samuel James. Okay, this is the person ultimately, because Jay-Z funded it, but this is the director. I want to show you this and watch what he says, and I want everyone to pay close attention to the director's words, what he says, because again, you should care, and we're going deeper than the average bear. And if you don't like it, then go watch some shallow stuff on YouTube. Here we go.
Caesar, and everyone says blasphemy. Envy. Matthew 24:5. Jesus' exact words are, "Many shall come in my name, saying I am the Christ."
Let me tell you why this is so ironic. And Ruslan,
so he thinks that's a good thing?
No, he doesn't. But that's what's so ironic is he literally is portraying another Christ in this movie.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, Jesus says that in Matthew 24:5. But watch how silly what Charlemagne says here. This is why you got to be on your P's and Q's, people, because the culture is not going to care about accuracy, about what's happening. Samuel James doesn't care. The Book of Clarence doesn't care. Ain't nobody care. Apparently, the Hebrew Israelites don't care.
I mean, that scripture torpedoes his whole movie.
Yes, but watch here. I think he's trying to say well, let's watch this. I want to show you because a number of things happen in this interaction. Watch this.
And they shall deceive many. The Bible itself speaks of Simon the sorcerer, who was trying to pay his way into the apostles. The Bible itself speaks of Simon the sorcerer. In Jesus' lifetime, in his 33 years of being on the planet, there was 200 to 300 people coming and saying that they're the Messiah.
Now, that is not accurate.
Right, that's the
hyperbolic. Yeah. Just so you know, there was not two. Now, the reason I know this is there is a number of books that are actually they're very expensive. That's why I had to go to the seminary library and check it out. But they're encyclopedias of messianic claimants. And they go through a lot of obscure people. One time I went to debate against some atheists. This is my first recorded debate on April 1st, many, many years ago in a public stage. It was my first public, not just internet on the street. Anyways, I brought up all these different names and I asked the atheists if they had heard of any of them. And they said, no. And I said, why do you think that is? And I made the points because they didn't rise from the dead. But there's not 200 or 300. Certainly there was a good amount. But when you say stuff like, oh, you can just throw a rock and hit a Messiah, that's exaggeration. 200 or 300 is certainly wrong. Maybe in the history of the world as far as meaningful ones, I mean, it's just not accurate. But I think what he's trying to say is Clarence is an example of somebody claiming to be the Messiah. I think that's what he's saying so
Right.
far. He's saying
Like
he's
yeah, right.
portraying
Because if the Bible itself can focus on false messiahs, why can't I?
right.
Basically,
But
is
watch
what-
where this conversation goes.
You only have to do a Google check. Now, I knew people would be saying that when they look at the teaser. We released a longer trailer and it was less, right? But now when you say blasphemy, you have to stand on it. I want to know why you're saying blasphemy.
So we're not saying blasphemy anything to do with the color. I'm not even really saying blasphemy. All I'm just saying is you're putting things in Jesus' lips that are false, that contradict what he did say. I am saying
and
that.
also a Google check is not a robust research methodology. We'll put
But
it out there.
I'd be curious to find. Notice,
A
first of all,
Google check.
2 to 300 is actually 100 different. First of all, and it's not true.
Is it because you're seeing people of color?
So look, the idea is, look, maybe people just aren't. So this is where it gets into the motivation of it. Just must be the issue of color. No, we're talking about the content here.
And if I'm speaking to a person of color, I'm going to ask a deep question.
This dude thinks he's so deep. It's not a deep question. The question is, what about the content of this Jesus character? What's he saying?
When you look at the trailer because you haven't seen the movie, when you look at the trailer for the Book of Clarence and you're yelling blasphemy, one, do you actually read the book you profess to know so much about? 2, and this is to all black people that yelling blasphemy. Are you saying blasphemy because you see yourself in that place and time? Because I'm showing people in that place and time as the same color as you? We are so trained to dismiss anything we see as
Is that really why? This is a straw man, in my opinion.
as
I mean,
either
yeah.
blasphemy.
Go ahead.
I mean, that might be the case for someone, but to say that is the case, no, not at all.
Yeah, so watch this.
Me, or in this day and age, it's the Illuminati.
That's right.
I always tell people, Charlotte, it's a crazy thing, right? You never hear 2 white people go, Spielberg and George Lucas are the Illuminati.
Oh, so he doesn't go to the YouTube because that's a whole lot of white people with
Yeah.
tinfoil hats
Yeah,
There's
you do
tons
hear
of them.
that. You do hear
all the
that.
time. All the time.
You know, you hear black people go, Jay-Z, Rihanna, and really, like really, the Illuminati, is that what we're doing as soon as we accomplish, something? So for me, I'm like, I never had any reservations at all. I don't create art in fear. I never had any reservations at all. And the fact that people are yelling blasphemy is exactly why I had to tell this story. Clarence is about an everyman. It's about you and I, right? Who believes he can do anything, right? But in this belief, he finds himself, in trouble with a village terror, and he ends up on a road of self-discovery and ultimately redemption and faith. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, I don't think it downplays faith at all. I think it examines the motivation behind our faith.
But
Thank
see,
you,
why aren't they
brother.
talking about
Thank
that?
you. That's exactly
refrain.
what it does. Like if we were born,
The refrain of
Yeah,
knowledge
he's
is greater than
misrepresenting his
belief.
own film. He's
Yeah.
misrepresenting because he's not an everyman. Because if you believe that the everyman is trying to hustle and lie to get people's money, then you have a horrible, view on humanity. If you think that's the everyman is trying to, beat you in the head and take your money. We're all doing that. And then for you to be like, well, yeah, I want to show black people. You want to show black people doing this? No, it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, it's like,
it's
well,
self-discovery. He's not trying to discover anything but money.
Well,
Then later on, they force a conversion, like out of nowhere. Yeah, but that's not what he's trying to do. His life is not that. His life is, I want money, I want power, I want the girl. Now, men, if that's what he means by every man, then I think so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But don't say that's crazy.
Check this out.
if we came about today, I have a 9-year-old son. Let me sit this guy down and try and explain to him about, the virgin birth and all of this stuff. He would look at me with disbelief at first.
Isn't it interesting how he brings up the virgin birth again?
Mm-hmm.
That's like a point of contention for him. My 9-year-old wouldn't believe the virgin birth.
you have to convince kids that Santa Claus exists. You have to tell them that from when they're a baby. You can't start from when they're 10, right? So, and
How is this? The stuff he's saying is like what atheists say about Christians. It's not faith building.
Right. And he's
So,
also he's upset about people trying to convince others, yet you're trying to convince us of what you believe about the film. So
Yeah, watch this, y'all.
the thing is, when you have all of these people that yell blasphemy, I like to say, like, Jesus had 12 apostles. He didn't have 7 billion. Where were all you guys when Jesus was around? Jesus had
What? We weren't alive, bro. Like,
but we do have some eyewitness testimonies called the Gospels. Read a couple. Please.
he claims that people that disagree with the movie are the ones who haven't read the book, though.
12 apostles, and probably the 60 or 70 people or a couple of hundred people he was preaching to when he was doing the sermons on the Mount. But they arrested Jesus, right? And then the Romans arrested him, and the Romans killed him, right? They crucified him. Where were all these choruses of supporters?
Christianity wasn't a movement yet, sir.
Right.
Jesus's followers hadn't went across the globe with the Great Commission, sir. Now, I want to go back a little bit. I just, it's sort of fake deep a little bit to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So that was about 9 or 10 minutes in. So now I'm going to go back to about 3 minutes in. I want you guys to hear some of this. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. Watch this.
Keep the fight alive, and also we're gods. You know what I mean? We're gods, man. I watched Django, and it's a good movie. We're called niggers 110 times in a 2-hour space. We ain't niggers, man. We're gods. You should address us as such. So for me, it was just that's probably the origin story.
Well, I was going to ask, hold on, before you do that.
That was straight 5%.
And what does that have to do with the film? Like, what is Django? I don't understand. It's like two very different periods of world history. I don't understand what he means by, like, why bring that up?
I think it's
outside of the fact that you don't like being called the N-word. You know what I mean? So,
but I mean, it's like two separate issues. Okay, that word, but then we're gods. We're gods.
Yeah.
You know, there's an in-between between being degraded and becoming a god. There's probably an in-between in there, you know, like human made in the image of God.
How did, so many people open their arms to you? Because you mentioned...
Hold on for a minute.
Jay Electronica, Michael K. Williams.
So, yeah, I mean, but that's the pendulum swinging the other way, right? So it's like, yes, Black and brown people have been marginalized and persecuted and enslaved. And this is, you know what I mean? So there is such a thing as white supremacy. So a lot of us think that the answer to that is, well, it's my turn to enslave. It's my turn to oppress. So as long as I get my turn, then, you know, so it's like, but that's not, and that's kind of what I think he's going for. It's like, well, you called us this, you did that. So now I'm going to call myself these things and I'm going to do, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of those things of, I'm going to fight fire.
I want to go back a little bit to 13 minutes again, because I wanted to make sure people had heard him say that. Mm-hmm. This is around where we were floating out before. Listen to this part right here.
Is in the film, right? Mm-hmm. And he's clear, and he's in the film, and I go through.
I don't know if it's as clear as you thought it was, because me and him was arguing this morning about this.
I don't know if it's clear as you thought it was. He's saying the message and stuff, but watch this.
I've got it. I think.
Yeah. See? Yeah. So it was super clear. But Charlemagne's wife got it. Here's the thing. And Envy, you know Envy loves an argument. Envy loves a debate.
Absolutely.
But there is a God in yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's super important, man. Like
Wait, what's that? You hear that, BK?
Yep.
There's a God in yourself.
So that was a point of the movie?
So if it is, by the way, then it is blasphemy.
right.
Or at least idolatry, if we're so scared of the B word. Idolatry. You know, watch this.
See each other's peace to the God. Mm-hmm. It's peace to the God. Like, there's a God in yourself, and that's like the most important thing, because not everyone that's gonna watch this film.
I gotta go. This is total 5%. That's what we're saying. He literally says peace to the God, peace to the God. Watch this.
His wife got it. Here's the thing. And Envy, you know Envy loves an argument. Envy loves a debate.
Absolutely.
So But there is a God in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's super important, man. Like when we see each other, it's peace to the God. It's peace to the God. Like there's a God in yourself. And that's like the most important thing, because not everyone that's going to watch this film is a Christian. Not everyone's going to watch it. You know, like when people champion their religions. But I find everyone to be a disbeliever of some sort.
He's about to make the atheist argument about believing in one less.
Right.
I hope people can see through this. I almost feel like, does this need a lot of commentary? This is the guy who made the film. Like, what's going on here, y'all?
I'm speaking to a Christian. Okay, so you disbelieve in all the other religions on the planet. You just believe in yours, right? But whatever your belief is, God is inside you.
Okay, so it's literally like, whatever you actually believe, let me tell you the truth. There's a God in you.
And this is the point of the movie. I didn't get this from the movie. Like if that's what he's saying, I'm like, yeah, I totally missed that. Like,
Yeah.
But whatever your belief is, even if you have no faith, God is inside you. And I want people to take that away from this movie. So what you took away from it, for me,
I want them to take away this movie. Yeah.
is a beautiful thing. It's a job well done, because it's the first movie of its kind in 136 years of the moving image, right? It's a really beautiful thing. And you know me, Charlemagne, like I'm
The first movie of its kind. I don't know. There's been other non-historical takes on Jesus.
well, I think he means that such a heavy emphasis on blackface, a biblical adaptation. That's what he means.
I think so. I mean, there was that one TV show. Was it The Black Jesus? You remember that?
Oh, stop! That's not that. Let's forget that one, please.
I never saw it, actually.
It was like a comedy. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, I never saw it, so I don't know. But okay, now I'm gonna go back to our review of it. But next time we return, I'm gonna play some of this IUIC review of this, because this is fascinating. Just hold up though. Okay, so here we are. We just wanted to watch the interview so you can see like what's happening here. BK and I are reviewing the Book of Clarence movie, and the way I'm approaching it is the Book of Clarence versus the Bible. And a big problem I had was the push towards Gnosticism.
Yep.
As if the Gospel of Thomas is legitimate, the idea of knowledge is stronger than belief. That's Gnosticism. What he just said takes it to a whole other level. Now, as we look at this, you have an interesting scene where Jesus confronts a crowd. This is where we left off before we took a little side thing. They're about to stone Mary, the adultery scene, right? This is the pericope adultery that most likely doesn't belong in the New Testament anyway. But nonetheless, what happens here is there's two people leading the charge. One's name is Jezebel. Totally mismatching stuff. And Jesus says, everyone's going to know your name. Because, Jezebel is like a common thing people use, even like don't know about the Bible. Remember the old outcast Jezebel? Whatever. And Jesus says something really weird, bro. I don't know. To me, he criticized the one guy and he says, and this is the one about to stone Mary. He says, stop messing around with the donkeys. And so I saw this part with one of my kids, and my one son was like, and I was like, just don't worry about it.
Right.
And the lady, Jezebel, says, I knew I smelled him on you. Like, what the what? Like, yo, what? So anyways, they don't stone him because Jesus literally halts the rocks in midair. Jedi Jesus. He pulls like drops them down. And then what we see is it switches over to this party, right? It seems like it's Clarence's party for being the Messiah, I guess. And there you see Judas like giving the info to the Romans, whatever, and they do that dance number. It's kind of smooth. It's kind of odd, in my opinion. I don't know if you want to say it doesn't really. They kiss. This is Clarence and the girl he's crushing on. And then the brother, Jedediah, confronts him afterwards. He brings his goons, but he also calls them the Romans. And they have this showdown, and Barabbas basically is shown to have superpowers. Barabbas is one of the guys who rolls in Jesus' posse. Right. Now, BK, could you see while a one Wester would get really excited about the scene with Barabbas? Because I want to remind you what happened, brother, because I watched it twice. The Romans who are portrayed as cops in this movie are throwing spear after spear at Barabbas. and Barabbas is soaking them all up and living and moving on and does not die.
Right, because not only GMS but IUIC teach that Israelites have superpowers. So
Well,
now
they
they could
will.
take that clip and say, see, look, even in this movie, they're depicting Barabbas, who's an Israelite. Look how he takes this. He's eating these spears like it's nothing. That's how we're going to be when we come into the kingdom. You know what I mean? We're going to just.
Have you ever
they're
seen
going
the
to try
One
to
West?
stop us, but they can't. You know what I
Yeah, have
mean?
you seen the One West imagery where it's a Hebrew Israelite looking guy and he's got all these bullets ricocheting off of him?
Nah.
Yeah.
Like Power Man. Like
No,
Wow.
literally. So to them, everything is spiritual. They'll be like, because they know the truth. The powers that be, the elites, they know the truth. So they think everything's deep and layered and all this. So then Brother Jedediah, after he sees this guy getting speared, he has a change of heart and has sort of a racialized showdown with the Roman in charge. And he just drops. The Roman guy is bigoted. He says some racial prejudice stuff against Jedediah and his people. You know, the way you look, I hate your skin. But then Jedediah responds with some supremacy and says, well, you're afraid of us because you're inferior to us.
Right.
I don't know if you want to comment
I
on
mean,
that part.
it's actually, I'm going to come in and leave because actually I'm going to go live in a couple minutes. But
oh, wow. What are you talking about?
we're going to talk about the UA Summit. We're going to do a recap.
Ooh, well, man, I better hurry up. But I don't know. This is my last live before the Florida conference, so I might go for another 30 minutes. But I'll let you go. Go ahead, brother.
But it's just weird because he is this hardened criminal. He's kind of like the kingpin of the Jerusalem underworld, right? He's there to kill Clarence because he owes him money, right? But all of a
And
sudden,
he even brought in the popo.
right? But now all of a sudden, now you're a freedom fighter. You know what I mean? Which that was a weird plot twist that no one saw coming. That it made no sense.
Yeah, it's not just that it was surprising; it didn't seem to have a precedent.
Right.
In
there was no lead up to this.
It wasn't an earned transformation.
Right.
It wasn't really an earned transformation. But all right, brother, if you got a jam.
Yeah, I got to go, man. So, again, it's great. And if you do finish early, everybody come over to my channel. We could watch the recap of the Urban Apologetic Summit.
Drop the link. Drop the link in the chat, brother.
All right, let me put it in the guest chat. I think I got the link already.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, God bless. We're going to switch over to book 3. So we're now in book 3, everybody, of the Book of Clarence, because the way the movie is laid out is book 1, book 2, book 3. So in book 3, it's just called the Crucifixion. And it begins right away with the pilot character. And the pilot character is James McAvoy, whom I love as an actor. And he's hard not to like as the pilot. He's probably the most likable pilot character you ever see and ever meet. He's just an interesting, kind of funny, interesting guy who's a jerky Roman on one hand, but on the other hand, he's kind of likable and doesn't seem like as bad as some of the other Romans, right? Like there's a part where a guy's like, bring it. He's like, you don't always have to yell, you know? So he tells him, hey, I got a mandate to round up all the false messiahs. Clarence, you're one of them. So pass this test and prove you're really Messiah. And the test is he's got to walk on water. Well, guess what? In front of everybody, including Pilate and the Romans, this Clarence character, who remember is a false pretender, walks on water. It's like the big reveal of the movie. This is not a spoiler-free review, people. So then everyone's shocked, right? And it's like Clarence doesn't know what's happening. And it reminds me a little bit of the old Steve Martin movie called Leap of Faith, where he's a fake, fraudulent, traveling televangelist character, but a real miracle happens, and it kind of changes stuff, right? So now because of this, the pilot character's like, well, I was going to let you go, but if you would just deliver me Jesus, because I know you're a fraud, but I don't really want you. I want this Jesus character. But now that you walked on water, I'm going to have to kill you. Because like it looks like you're like some kind of real Messiah now. Because so sorry, buddy, you know, you're going to die. So now he's in jail. Thomas visits him in jail. He apologizes, and they basically reconcile. Remember, Thomas is the twin brother of Clarence. The next scene is Jesus with his disciples. And here's what I'm saying. If they want to say it's not a movie about Jesus, because Jay-Z in his review said this is a movie about Clarence. It's not about a movie about Jesus. Jesus is sort of in the backdrop of the story. Okay, but you want to have it both ways, Jay-Z. Here's what I mean by that. There are literally scenes where Clarence isn't mentioned. He isn't the main person in the frame, that aren't about Clarence, that are just Jesus with his disciples. Now, if you have that, it seems like you are trying to say something about Jesus. And what happens is, in this scene is, Jesus says to his disciples, it's like a Last Supper type of thing. One of you is a canary, which is a hood way to say, one of you is singing to the authorities, And then the Judas is like kind of forcingly breaks bread because he's like, if you dip the bread, and Judas like force does it. And it's like this scene, and it's kind of interesting. It's like a very artistic take on the situation, and they pan out and it shows it like it's kind of like the Last Supper painting portrayed there. So it's very artistic, but it doesn't really do much other than so Judas is like betraying people out here, right? And so then the next scene is Pilate with Clarence, and Clarence makes a joke about the Romans having small male members. No joke. And what Clarence tries to do is he tries to get them to go after Judas and say that's the real Messiah, not Jesus, but it doesn't work. So now what happens, next scene, is there's the real Jesus in the movie. Most of the movie he's been hooded, but he takes it off and you can see who he is. So he's like the Black Jesus character. He gives a coin to the bum. Now this bum has been in the background of the whole movie. The bum's been in and out of the movie. But this bum is like caked layered. He sounds kind of like a white guy. He is, by the way. It's Benedict Cumberbatch or whatever, Doctor Strange. But he looks so like darkened that you can't tell for sure what's happening with them. And he's been getting kind of like mistreated the whole movie, asking for money for the whole movie. He's in and out. Well, what happens is Jesus gives him this multiplying coin and it multiplies, right? And so then then this bum character, after having the Black Jesus give him this money, he's going to go, because he's also healed. He's like straightens up his back. This bum character goes to the salon because remember also Verinia, who is Clarence's crush, works at a salon. So the bum character goes to the salon and is like, hey, can you hook me up? I want to look better. Well, and there's where people are going to see a lot of meaning, right? The bum character is like, looks like a dark person because of the what's on him. But when they fix him up, they show him and his clothes are all brand new. They gave him a whole wardrobe. It's like white Jesus makeover. So the bum character now, after getting whitewashed, because he was dark from the dirt and whatnot, is white Jesus. And so when they see him, the people in the salon are tripping out. One of the ladies says, he looks just like Jesus. And the other lady says, but you never seen Jesus. But he's like a stereotypical glamorized white Jesus character. Now, it's played for laughs. It's actually really funny. It is a funny commentary on white Jesus. I actually thought it was funny. And they say funny things. So one of the salon gals goes, he's so pure and white and so trustworthy. Like, it's sort of a critique of certain things. I'm not going to get too deep into, but if you watch it, you'll see what I'm saying. But it is very humorous. So now this white Jesus character, he's like brushing his hair, giving the thumbs up to people, smiling. Everyone's like, woo, walks through the streets kind of smiling and primming and, and passing out money to people, and everyone loves him. And the Roman says, looks like we have another false Messiah, right? So it's a funny little quick scene, right? So then you go on, and Verinia visits Clarence in jail and basically admits her love to him and all that. Now you see Clarence, and it's just a crucifixion at this point. He's getting beat up. He basically sort of does their own version of Stations of the Cross. He says to his mom, hold space. The mom yells, they always take away our babies. The next scene, you see the Black Jesus character in the movie. And the reason why I'm saying that now is because there's a white Jesus now. That's the reason why I'm saying that. They've introduced a white Jesus character. That's why I started saying, before I wasn't saying that, if you notice. He says, this is why I was sent here. And he says this, they will arrest me in 3 days. Now, to my knowledge, Jesus never said that. He talks about death and resurrection in 3 days, but he never says they're going to arrest me in 3 days, to my knowledge, other than we're going to go in here. So it just seems like, again, like conflation of what was actually said, but okay, whatever. Now, the next scene is Clarence crucified, and they do it very artistic. It's kind of, they do it differently than the Passion as far as the aesthetics of it. And it's actually pretty aesthetically cool in a sense, even though it's like a sad scene, And he's crucified, but guess who else is crucified? The white Jesus character. And the white Jesus character is real bitter about the situation. He goes, humans, God's only mistake. And then Clarence says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Clarence, who was the hustler the whole time. Then white Jesus says, God, he prays, and he says, give them fire, brimstone, and lava. and then says this, the white Jesus character. And that's kind of funny. So he's praying that God would kill all these people. He says, give him lava, especially that prick painting me. That's what the white Jesus character says. And then they pan over and there's a guy painting the white Jesus at the scene of the crucifixion. So it's kind of a humorous light note, right? So then, but it's also a commentary. I get it. Okay. And here's what's fascinating. Clarence apologizes to white Jesus because at one point in the movie he stole his robe. And Clarence says this, quote, I've been a victim of my own ignorance. That's just it. We need enlightenment, not punishment. That's pure Gnosticism. So God is saying he's a just judge who's gonna bring his wrath upon sin. This character, Clarence, on the cross says his mistake was not sin, it was ignorance, which is the whole point of Gnosticism, is that you're given true knowledge. So he's saying his problem is he was ignorant. We need enlightenment, not punishment. This is a Gnostic Jesus. Forget about all the commentary with color to an extent and say, what is the content of this Jesus' teaching? What's the content of what Clarence says and what the movie director is saying through the mouthpiece of Clarence? We need enlightenment, not punishment. White Jesus says, well, good luck with that. And then Elijah says, there's no need, I think it's Elijah or maybe it's Zeke, but one of the characters at the crucifixion scene says, there's no need to be scared. We've got God with us, all of us. Seems to indicate what the director was saying about everybody has God in them. And then Elijah says, Barabbas was right. You are a king, says that to Clarence. Now, he hasn't acted like a king the whole movie, but that's what he says. Now, he dies. The next scene, believe it or not, is the actual Jesus character goes into Clarence's tomb and raises him from the dead. And then quotes part of John 11 to him. Remember John 11, I am the resurrection and life? He says that, essentially an accurate quote, basically from what I could tell. And then Clarence says what Thomas says at the end of John 20. Remember when he sees Jesus, what Thomas says? Thomas says, my Lord and my God. Thomas says that in John 20. Clarence doesn't say my God, but he does say to the Jesus character who raises from the dead, my Lord. Then a new light bulb appears over Clarence's head. It doesn't indicate exactly what his new idea is, but the movie ends there. That's where it ends. Very fascinating, very interesting. Now, I said I was going to go longer, but I didn't know BK was doing a program when I said that. So here's the thing. I want to do another program with you guys where I go through the Gospel of Thomas with you. I want to do another program with you where I go through the infancy Gospel of Thomas. I want to do another program with you where I go through the Acts of Thomas. I want to go do another program with you where I go through Gnostic Jesus and talk about Pistis Sophia and things like that. I want to do that with you. However, my brother's going live, and I don't want to do that because of that. But I do want to give a shout out as I look now through the live chat. Much love to every single one of you. And I think that's a good way to put it, James G. He says, Gnostic Book of Clarence. So instead of doing this, a lot of you are so politically trained that you just think in terms of right and left and political. A lot of you say, oh, look at this woke movie with woke Jesus. Don't even do those categories, really, in my opinion. I would encourage people to stay away from that because a lot of that is from the post-Christian right, which is groundless, rootless, and in my opinion, ultimately aimless, and is not going to be very helpful to Christians in the long term, that kind of version of the right. Now, that doesn't mean the left is any better or right. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is take our cues from different things and say, what is really going on here? And really, this movie is pushing a Gnostic Jesus. And by the way, I'm not one of those Christians who says everything is Gnostic, because there are Christian commentators who say everything is Gnostic. I don't do that because that's an oversimplification. You flatten everything out into Gnosticism, right? But you do have a Gnostic Jesus here because the Gospel of Thomas and the things that are said. Specifically, this quote right here. And then what I'm going to try to do with you guys is I'm going to try to perhaps do another program where we get into this and we can more so really talk about what's behind this movie. Not really about the movie, about the Gnostic stuff. But let me play this for you if you can hear it.
My name, don't worry. Soon everybody will. Who are you? To come forward to eat at our feast.
exists from the undivided.
The Jesus character in this movie says, I am he who exists from the undivided. A lot of you don't know, and that's okay. That's why you're here with me. That is a direct quote from the fake Gnostic Jesus from the Gospel of Thomas. I am he who exists from the undivided. So this is a Gnostic Jesus. Now let's get together again, I'm hoping, and let's talk about this Gnosticism and stuff like that and go beyond just this movie. But in the meantime, I want to invite everyone one last time to Sarasota, Florida, because what's going to be happening in Sarasota, Florida is myself, David Wood, John McCrae, a whole bunch of other people. What was going to be happening? You know what's going to be happening? We're going to be at ApologeticCon Monday through Wednesday. You can still go. If you use promo code Street Apologist, you get $100 off. If you contact me directly and you're able to go, I will be able to get you a further discount. You'll have to pay, to get down there and everything, but I can take care of the other element of it and help you out there. You just got to talk to me. It's this Monday through Wednesday, so you're going to have to hurry up and get it together if you're in the area. But I'm going to play 2 trailers for this because I want you guys to come. So let's get together again and talk about this. And be sure to check out BK's current live stream where he goes over the review for the Urban Apologetics joint and all that. And I just want to give a shout out to everybody, but especially, I said I was going to do this more where I give shout out to supporters. Brian Peters, he's someone that doesn't always show up in the live chat and whatnot, but he's somebody who supports via PayPal. And so Brian Peters, I just want to thank you for being a steady supporter as a part of the squad. Thank you very much. With that, watch these 2 trailers with David Wood, my boy, and with Chip Bennett, Dr. Chip Bennett, the pastor who's hosting the conference. See y'all again soon.
World. If I can make it all the way to the Dome of the Rock, then you can make it to ApologeticCon in Florida, March 4th through 6th. We've got all your favorite apologists and YouTubers giving their most epic presentations. Notice, Mike Winger is not on the list. Why? Because I said all your favorite apologists and YouTubers, not the biggest nerd on the planet. So join me at ApologeticCon. The link to register is in the description box. Be sure to use the promo code DIZZLE to get a discount.
I've got an awesome opportunity for you. You really need to go and check out apologeticcon.com. We are, as a church, flying in many apologists for a 2.5-day conference where we will be dissecting everything biblical, how to deal with faith, how to explain answers, how to deal with culture, how to answer problems in the Bible. I mean, there will be so much information, you won't even know what to do with it. And listen, space is limited. We have a sanctuary that seats about 1,000 people, and we're limiting it to a little under that number so it's still comfortable. And this will eventually get sold out. So you need to act now. And it's a great price. It's only $149 for the entire $149 for the entire conference, and there's like some meals and other stuff provided. You can go onto the website and see what we provide. And if you're a student at any school, we have a $99 deal for you, and that's even more limited. There's not a lot of space for that, but please avail yourself of this. I promise you, if you want to know how to better defend your faith, if you want to know how to better answer questions, this is the place for you. I mean, we're going to have Frank Turek will be there, John McCrae will be there, Braxton Hunter will be there, Inspiring Philosophy will be there, Michael Jones. I mean, they're going to be, and there's plenty other people going to be there. This will be, in my opinion, this is the apologetic conference for the new year. Please go check out apologeticcon.com, register, come down to Sarasota, Florida, hang out with us. I promise you, you will be happy there.